Hey there, it's Tom Strayer here on behalf of Indestructible Productions once again with another Scum build video. Now, today is all going to be about sanding. Lots and lots of sanding. And at this point, the guitar has already been sanded all the way up to 320. But in order to get a really good finish out of this, especially seeing as I'm using water-based stain, I need to wet the grain so that so that I get a better result. But basically what this does is raise the grain, and I keep on doing this over and over and sanding back up until the grain doesn't raise anymore. It's a fairly simple process. Just use plain old ordinary water to wet the entire guitar. And I do this pretty much for any type of finish I'm gonna do. With stain, it's just kind of self-explanatory for me for some reason. I don't know. It's just how I've been taught to do it, so, you know. But I noticed that there is a difference in doing this also with if you're just painting or putting lacquer or any sort of finish. This works perfectly well. I am gonna say already at this point that due to me updating my software to the most current version of Premiere, finally, I've had some technical difficulties, so I'm not going to have any of the animation floating text type things in this video, but I'm pretty sure you guys can live without one video of stuff like that. So yeah, now I'm just doing final checkups, seeing how the grain has raised everywhere, seeing where I need to sand down, and looks like Ben is filming a What's on the Bench in the background. So this must be...
Tommy's doing a private project. Show me the back of that.
Yeah. Been having a lot of fun with inlaying. I could have done it out of something a little bit thinner than 4 mil, but...
Yeah, I agree with you.
Turned out alright.
Yeah, it's nice. Where's the artwork from?
It is some artwork from a band called Delane. Klein is a big fan, so wanted me to do that on the back.
There we go. Awesome sauce. Enjoy.
Yeah. So what I was going to say that this must be the last What's on the Bench that I was in, but that's actually not true. There was still one more after this video. So yeah, that was fun. There was just a couple of things where it's like I had to go back later and ask Sean to edit it in a way where you didn't see too much of the guitar in the video because the client didn't want any videos out in the public of the guitar. It was fine to show off the inlay, but not so much of everything else up until the guitar was absolutely finished and in his hands, which, you know, I get. So I try and respect my customers' wishes in that sense. So with that done, I'm doing a wonderful job of sanding and sanding and sanding. The volute especially is really annoying because it's end grain, so it's gonna keep on raising up a whole lot more than the rest. As will the cutaways, which is by far my least favorite thing to sand. I hate sanding down cutaways because it's all very tricky end grain, and it shows scratches very well. That's another thing that the wetting down the grain does very well. It reveals a lot of the scratches in your wood and glue lines and stuff like that, so you know what to fix. If you didn't do that, then you get an inconsistent finish and you wouldn't know, or you putting finish on would reveal all these faults, and then you'd have to go back and sand that down and waste a lot of time. So it's just better to do it this way. Now I'm painting on the shielding paint. The reason that I do this at this point is if I were to do this before sanding, I would run the risk of accidentally hitting this graphite paint with the sandpaper and smearing it all across the back of the guitar, which would be a total nightmare. if this stuff gets anywhere you don't want it, it is so hard to try and get it out because it seeps into the grain and stains everything. So with that in mind, you just got to be very, very careful that you don't smear it anywhere. And smear is a very good word because that's exactly what this paint does in unwanted areas. So yeah, it's fairly straightforward. I'm just going about and painting the entire cavity. And of course painting the lip very carefully so that I don't get it anywhere I don't want it. The reason I'm painting the lip as well is because that provides a point of contact with the back plate when you put the screws through. So the shielding therefore becomes complete. It's also somewhat of a tricky substance to work with because it's not like a normal paint because it has graphite in it, which makes it more like a paste in a way. It's somewhere between a paste and a paint, really, and it's really tricky to work with, especially when it dries up. It tends to get a bit flaky at points. So as long as you're just careful about it, you should be fine. And blend in all the drips just so that they don't leak into places. Good thing is that it dries very quick, so you don't have to worry about it dripping all over the place. And of course, doing the same thing on the back plate. Making sure that you don't need to go all the way to the edge. I leave a mil or two, but just enough so that you get contact with the lip on the cavity route. Now that the water has all dried up, it's time to continue onwards with sanding, and more sanding. With flat areas, you should always use a block for your sanding. I have this wood block with a little bit of cork on the bottom, and that really helps this process out a whole lot and helps it get consistent. If I were to do this by hand, then I'd get inconsistencies and divots and stuff like that, and that's not something I'd want to do anyway. But considering that this is a veneer top, it's even less so. It's something I want to do because I'd avoid the risk of going through the veneer. Not this particular veneer because it's ridiculously thick, but you know, normally the veneer's very, very thin. So just be careful if you do something like this.
What were they called?
There, I'm also using the edge of the block to get the edge of the fretboard a little bit. So now comes the serial numbering portion. So I have these punches with letters and numbers, which, you know, I should be beating this up against a block of sorts, or have, you know, a proper support on the front of the headstock, because now it's moving quite a bit. So these don't turn out as good as I would hope them to be, but it gives me a good guideline, because what I'm going to do is take a fresh scalpel blade and engrave those by hand, which was something that I was planning to do in the very beginning anyways. But then I remembered that we had these punches, so yeah. There we go, new scalpel blade. And then it's a matter of informing the customer where I'd want the logo for IP to go. Take a picture, send it over, and check whether that placement would be good. With everything, I try and have as much contact with the customer as possible, provide as many pictures as I can, and if there's any questions or anything that I'm feeling kind of unsure about, I'd rather ask instead of going and assuming. So little by little, using very small cut-to-cut, or using the cut-to-cut method, and then sanding it back to get off all that burr. There, so I got the GS, which stands for Glory and Scum, which is where the artwork on the back inlay is from, and the numbers will be 01 because it is the first and only of its kind. Now when it comes to doing the logo on the Volute, this was done way before the rebranding, so way before the logo change and everything else. So I'm still doing the old nuclear blast type logo on the back, which it's actually very, very nice. This is one of the last guitars to have that logo on it, and yeah, there was just a lot of difficulties with the logo in general. It's something that I had ever since 2008, but it's very hard to replicate in an accurate manner. Like there, I had to erase it and draw it on again, and a lot of the times drawing it on things, you can make it look kind of phallic if you think about it, which, you know, isn't the greatest thing in the world for a logo for a company. Get a proper light source so I can see what I'm doing. It's just a matter of little by little, very carefully, having as many points of contact on the blade and my work surface. As you can see, I'm pretty much using every single one of my fingers to guide the blade and hold my work in place, so I don't have any slip-ups. Because I am engraving on wood, the blade has a tendency to follow the grain if you're not careful. And sanding it down just to get it nice and clean and smooth. So now I've gone ahead and I've sanded the entire guitar back to 320 again, made sure that I removed all raised grain, and now it's time to wet everything all over again. Yeah, it's just a matter of repeating the process as many times over as you need, and once the grain doesn't raise anymore, then it's time for you to move on to finishing, which is going to be a whole lot of fun. Anywho, this video's about to end very soon, so I'm going to thank you guys for watching once again, and realizing I say once again way too often. One of those things that I can't shake off, and I'm getting off topic again. Anyway, be sure to hit that like button, click the little bell, notification thingy so that you actually, well, the little bell button, so you get notifications every time I put out new content. If you haven't subscribed and you like what you see, go ahead and subscribe. If you don't like what you see, believe me, there are so many cool things that I have coming up I'm really excited about. Like I spoke about, or like I talked about in my previous video, I have a lot of tutorials coming up. And if you have ideas for tutorials that you'd like me to do, feel free to comment down below. All right, I think that's about that, and I will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.